Alongside the Klon Centaur, the Tube Screamer and the Blues Breaker, the Nobels ODR-1 is one of the most ubiquitous sort of overdrive sounds in the market at the moment. Lots of different people are making clones and improvements, and at all price points you can basically find a Nobels type sound, starting with the Nobels ODR-1 itself. Now, I've done plenty of videos about this pedal before. I even gave one away as my 1,000 subscriber giveaway, so I do enjoy this pedal. But the more I play with the sort of other versions on the market, I realise the Nobels is a great starting point, and some of these other pedals have made improvements that are worth spending money on. The question is how much money and which is the right one for you. So in this video I'm going to show you a bunch of different demos and talk about different reasons why you might buy one over the other. Let's just start out with what is that sort of ubiquitous Nobels sound. So in those opening demos, hopefully what you heard was this sort of harmonic edge that soft clips. I think that's the main thing about this. It has this really lovely sort of amp-like compression, and I can only really, well, not only, but I can think of like a Led Zeppelin Marshall sound. That's what springs to mind for me, and it really makes playing comfortable. So with that hairy edge and those beautiful harmonics and that soft clipping, you don't feel too revealed. But funnily enough, as you spend more on these pedals, you feel more and more revealed. That's one of the things that I've noticed. You probably see it in some of the later demos, but the Nobels ODR-1 itself, it's not as good at cleaning up, and it's not as dynamic as these other two pedals, which are the Nordland ODR-C and the Vemuram Shanks ODS-1. Now, both of those pedals are way more expensive. The Nordland was £250, £280, and you can order it directly from Nordland. I think anywhere in the world they'll ship. And that is actually made by the original founder, inventor of the Nobels ODR-1, who moved on and now makes the pedal that he thinks it should always have been, which has various other things, which I'll tell you about in a second. Then the Vemuram Shanks ODS-1 is pretty crazy expensive. I think it's the most expensive single overdrive pedal new on the market really these days. About £380. And it's long been my favourite pedal for various things. The reason for that is actually because when it's used at lower gain settings, higher volume settings, it's one of those that can really fit in with most of my guitars, most of my amps. It just works beautifully well as a cleanish boost edge of breakup, and it's not actually got that much of the Nobels character, I find, at that point, because it's more dynamic, it cleans up better, and then as you hit the gain in, it does compress more and more until the point when you reach that. I want to get more into that a little bit later. First of all, let me show you just briefly what the extra features are on these other two pedals. So the original Nobels has basically three controls: the drive, the spectrum, and the level. The spectrum is not exactly like a tone control. You can look up in the manual what exactly it's doing, but it essentially acts like a tone control. Okay, I should probably explain that now. The spectrum control doesn't just affect the trebles like a lot of tone controls or treble controls would do. This is sort of active control. So if in the middle position, it's at its standard position, and the wave it basically rolls off at the top end. So then as you turn it up to the right, you actually increase the bass and the treble and the mids all at the same time. And if you lower it all, but it accentuates the mids a little bit more. So in all positions, it's basically meant to fit into a mix pretty well. So it's got a decent amount of top end, not too much low end, using the bass cut as well. And the mids stay present, which is important, basically, if you want to hear yourself in the mix. So that's how it works. So here's just a brief demo of what it sounds like in three different positions, sort of 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and let's see what it sounds like. So as you probably heard there, this spectrum control isn't exactly like other tone controls. I mean, I didn't change the volume of that at all, and yet in the lower setting at 9 o'clock, it was so quiet in comparison. You know, everything just drops a little bit. Yet it's still got some presence there, so I think, you know, this can help you in smaller venues and things like that. Really interesting. As you lift that spectrum control, it really fills out a little bit more. I mean, it's not changing which frequencies are being accentuated, but everything is just getting lifted up, and you feel like there's just a lot more going on, which is, it's great. It's very powerful control, which makes this pedal, you know, really, I think what it is actually is this particular control. Anyway, let's move on. And then the later Nobles pedals, like the one I've got, have got a sort of bass cut switch on the inside, which in this video I've got the bass cut switch in the negative position, meaning it's actually cutting the bass, because it's pretty boomy in the low end otherwise. So here's just two little clips, one with the bass cut not activated and one with the bass cut activated, which is what I'm going to have throughout the rest of the video and previously in the video. I just turned up the bass on my amp a tiny bit just to help accentuate this feeling, but I put that back for any of the rest of the demos. Now for the Nordland, I do have a manual in front of me. This has got way more control to it. So it's got a drive, a level, a spectrum again, and a mid control. The spectrum control works just like it does on the Nobles pedal, but here we've got a mids control, which in this little demo here you're going to see is actually really powerful. So the mids control is actually, I think, a fantastic addition to the pedal because it can actually change the character of the whole thing, making the pedal more versatile. When it's in the middle position, that is the standard Nobles position. As you lower it down, you feel a little bit like you're playing, a scooped amp. It's not actually scooping that much, but on the graph in the book, it shows you just a slight dip, and it just has that slight sort of Fender tubey sound. When you then push it up the other way to 3 o'clock, you get much more like that other sort of famous green pedal, and you actually have a hump, as opposed to when it's in the middle or at 9 o'clock, there's no hump. You know, it's either flat or slightly down. So, you know, you really do change it, and the whole sort of level goes up as well. So same with the spectrum control, you know, it can raise and lower the volume of what you're playing. So you can use the mids and the spectrum in together to sort of create a sound that you really want. And then it's got two other controls that sort of give it more uniqueness. It's got a low cut knob, not just a low cut switch, so you can blend in more or less lows. And then it's got this ODC, which is, I'm going to tell you what it means, the overdrive decompress. So basically, as you turn this knob up, you decompress slightly and get more dynamics and less compression. Okay, let's just hear a short clip of the ODC fully off and then the ODC fully on. Yeah, so it's really clear there when you're playing as well under the fingers. There's a lot more compression when that ODC is all the way off. And just by looking at the sort of waveform on my editing thing, it's, you know, it's a lot more compressed. You can see the wave is sort of smaller. And then when you turn it all the way the other way, it gets louder because there's less compression, there's less roll off. It's a bit spikier, a bit more dynamic. I'm going to say that at any given time, somewhere between fully off and fully on would be best. And, you know, there's a lot of room to play around with it there, but really useful function. The Vemuram, on the other hand, looks a lot more simple. It's got a gain, a volume, and a tone, all very powerful controls. Altogether, there's a lot more output in terms of volume that you can get from this pedal. Then on the back, it's got a bass and a saturation screw. Now, I'm not a fan of these screws. It's ridiculous, really, why they're screws. You know, you have to have a little screwdriver. I've lost the screwdrivers that came with the Shanks and with the Jam Ray. So if you're touring around, it's likely that you're going to get yourself annoyed occasionally. Anyway, I keep the bass pretty much as low as it goes because it's a very powerful control. And at the beginning of the bass sort of function, it will fill in the tone a bit, and then it will start to get thumpy. So you've got a lot of room to play with that depending on your amp and guitar. And then the saturation, I only have it on a little bit again. I don't want it to sound too unnatural or too big and saturated. But it may well be why in this video the other two pedals sound a little bit more hairy and a bit more compressed. It could be to do with that saturation. But that's the way I like to have the Shanks set up. So it's always complicated sort of comparing three different pedals that are similar but have different ways of controlling them. So I don't want to go any more in depth than I have already, but I wanted to give you my thoughts and feelings. I've had the Nobles for quite a long time, couple of years, the Shanks for over a year, and the Nordland is new to me. So here's what I really think. If your budget fits £100 or £250 or £400, then really I'd say there are incremental steps in the quality of the sound and the playing as you go up. So if you're comfortable spending the Vemuram money, then I would buy the Vemuram. The happy medium, the Nordland, is still not that cheap. If you like tweaking more, then you may prefer it to the Vemuram. Overall, I prefer the sound quality of the Vemuram and the oomph that it has. The feeling under the fingers, to me, is better for me. But the Nordland is a big improvement over the Nobles in a few different ways with those different controls. On the other hand, if you don't need a lot of tweaking, and if you're happy to have less dynamic and less cleanup, then the Nobles is great, because the main sound that you get out of it is that sound that's really enjoyable. You know, the hairy edge harmonics and the lovely saturation and everything. You can't do much else. Once that sound is there in the pedal, it doesn't really clean up that well. It does somewhat, but you lose a lot of oomph. But for that price, and especially if this is not going to be like a main sound for you, but just another pedal in your arsenal, then I think the Nobles is always going to be popular for that. The Nordland's tweaks, having the low cut knob instead of just a switch so you can dial it in, having this mid control that actually completely changes the effect of the pedal because you can really mid push it and slightly mid scoop it, is great. And overall the sort of feeling of quality and the dynamics and cleanup are better. Personally, if I was going to spend the money on the Nordland, I'd add the extra £100 or so and buy the Vemuram. But you know, that £100 or so could be the deal breaker for you. Altogether, they're all three great pedals. It's, you know, in some ways, someone might prefer the Nobles when they play it because it just has that slightly more rolled off compression than the other two, which it depends whether you play really dynamically or not. So I hope I've shown you enough to give you an idea of what you would prefer. You can't really go wrong with these pedals. They're yeah, it's a really good bunch of pedals here. I like them all, so I'm lucky. But the one that stays on my board is going to be the Vemuram for now. I think it's got the highest quality sound, and for me, I like the slightly cleaner, less saturated tone I can get by turning that saturation down. But yeah, probably if I was touring a lot, you know, if I played live a lot, I'd probably use the Nordland because the quality sound's pretty much up there with the Vemuram, you know. But it's got way more that you can muck around with, so depending on your venue, it would be really useful to have all of those controls. So ultimately, they all fit different people. We're going to end here with 3 different demos. I've got a Telly with a bit more gain. I've got a Strat with less gain and more volume, just to see how that sounds. And then I've got an ES355 with some gain and a higher spectrum to see, you know, what it sounds like. So I hope you enjoy the rest of that. Let me know if you've got any questions down below. And lastly, if you didn't know, I'm giving away the Duellist pedal by Kingtone. This is the previous model. The current one has new dip switches on the outside. I did a video last week, which you can check out here. You just need to subscribe to the channel publicly and comment on this video or a future video to get in with the giveaway, and I'll send it anywhere in the world. So anyway, enjoy the rest of the video. Cheers.